Hey there, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of The Dig. Glad you're here. Listen, I want to jump right into what I want to talk about today. I have been asked quite a bit about what I believe the secret of marriage is. And I have to tell you, I don't necessarily believe there's a secret. I believe that there's some things that we need to do both spiritually and practically in order to make our marriages work and for you to enter into a good marriage. Now, what I'm about to say, of course, is not some type of foolproof thing, but I do believe that it's important that what I'm sharing with you is something that you apply or that you can apply if you choose to do so. Now, I'm just about a few months away from my 30th anniversary. I got married really young, and people will look at us now. Our kids are grown. We have grandkids, and we're now empty nesters, and we just are 52 years old. And there's a lot of people that kind of trying to figure out, like, so what's the secret? You know, they've been through multiple marriages. I'm not here to condemn anybody about that. I recognize and realize that some marriages are, in many cases, sometimes just irreparable due to certain types of damage and things along those lines. But I did want to share something with you that I think is very important, because everybody's runs around. I see it a lot on TikTok and all these other things where people are always kind of, hey, what's the secret? Tell me the secret. You know, there's, in my opinion, there's no secret. Again, I think there's some both very clear application from scripture that we should use. And then there's also some practical things that we need to use. So let me go ahead and jump right into what it is that I want to share with you. Okay. And it's this. I simply believe that there's a passage of scripture that I live by. Two of them, actually, that I live by, that I think that as a believer, you should use regularly. Now, there's also another passage of scripture. I will talk about that passage of scripture that I don't think is necessarily taken out of context. I just don't think it's always used in its full context and for its ability to help people the way that it was intended to help people. So let me share this with you right here. And it's this. It's Proverbs 4:7. If you've never read it, very powerful passage of scripture. Here's what it says. He says, getting wisdom is the wisest thing you can do. And whatever else you do, develop good judgment. That's the NLT. Getting wisdom is the wisest thing you can do. And whatever else you do, develop good judgment. James chapter 1, right, verse 5 says, if any man lack wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives liberally to all men. So my thoughts to you today, for those of you who are wanting to get married, those of you who are divorced and want to see about getting married again, those of you who are just really inquiring about you're married and you want to know what's the secret. Well, for me, it's wisdom. And that's getting wisdom, especially before you get married. Here's one of the key things that I think is incredibly important for people to do who are considering getting married. And that's this. First of all, I think that, and I know a lot of people may disagree with this, and that's okay. It's my video, so I'm going to share it the way I see it. I think that you should take some time before you decide to get married. I do. And I can tell you that from experience. I did it for 8 months. I dated for 8 months and I got married. Now, granted, I'm in my 30th year, coming up on my 30th year. But looking back at it, both my wife and I would tell you that we would have a little bit more time would have been a blessing for us to be able to do. So I think that you should take your time. I'm going to tell you why. Because when you're taking your time, you are getting to know this other person. You're getting to know this person. You're going to gain some wisdom about this person. So here's another thing that I think that you should look at more on the practical side. Okay. I think that you should pay attention to that person's parents, male or female. I think you should pay attention to their parents. Look at the history of their family. Look at the history of their siblings. Look at how long their parents have been married. If they were married and divorced, look at where they are now today. Are they doing well? All these kind of things. Have they been married a multiplicity of times? Why am I telling you to do this? If their spouse has been married, their siblings been married a multiplicity of times. I want you to consider all of this. Just think through it. If you say, well, what if their siblings are younger than them? Then look further up their family line at their aunts, their uncles, their grandparents, all that kind of stuff. So you get a clear picture of who it is that you are marrying. Here's why. Because there are a lot of people who learn almost everything they learn from the household that they grew up in. I know a lot of people don't want to hear that, but it is a fact. Most of what you're learning, how to deal with the relationships, how to be in relationships, came from your parents. Same thing applies to you. There are things that you do that you can't even explain, but it came from the household that you lived in, and it's just the way everybody in your house did it. This too is problematic for a lot of people, because what you do is you decide that you want to bring your whole life into this marriage with this other person, and you don't go away from the things that your family did. You want to keep those things intact, even if you don't fully know why they did. That also causes a lot of friction, and I'll talk about that in just a little bit. But those are two things. One, get wisdom. The other thing is, I think you need to look at that entire family before you get married to the person. And third, I think that you should spend a lot of time dating them. Here's why. Because you don't know what they're like in various different situations. You have no clue. You don't know what that person, how they react, how to respond. You don't know any of those things. I think you should look at emotional and mental health when you're dealing with people. I think that you should find out what kind of traumatic incidences have happened in their lives. All kinds of stuff like that I think are important for you. And I think that that takes time. I think it takes time for you to discover that, to find that, to see that. And if you don't do that, you're going to get into this relationship and then you're going to be like, oh, this doesn't work for me. All because you didn't want to take the time. Because as many of us, especially Christians, we get into these relationships, and the church that we belong to says better for you to marry than it is for you to burn. But you got into this relationship just so that you could have sex. And here's what the problem is. You know nothing about the person that you're having sex with, except for that you're married to them. And then you have to deal with a whole bunch of stuff that you don't like. There's another thing that I think that you should look at, and that are, what are your deal breakers? What kind of deal breakers do you have? Please hear me when I say this. I cannot express this enough. Whatever your deal breakers are, stick to them. I think it is incredibly unfair for you to get married to somebody with all these deal breakers, and the ideal that you have of going ahead and getting married to them anyway, in spite of the very obvious and very clear deal breakers, is that you believe that somehow they ultimately are going to change because you are the one who can change them. It's not going to happen. So if you have deal breakers and you see stuff from people that you're saying to yourself, hey, not my cup of tea, don't like it, don't want to be involved in it, stick to it. I think that that's the fairest thing for you to do. I also think that, again, whatever you did in your family, if that doesn't match your current situation, if your spouse, male or female, doesn't matter, whatever side it's on, if that doesn't match where you and your spouse are trying to go, then you need to let that little tradition go, perhaps. If it's something that's very important to you, this is why time is important before you get married. Have that conversation up front, communicate that up front, make sure that you are able to talk about it up front. I think that is just incredibly important for you to do that, so that person can decide if they like your little tradition and they want to be involved in it. Okay, so I think these are things that are important. I think you need to understand the person's relationship with their parents. If that guy is a mama's boy, then, and he's really connected to her, you need to find out at what level, and is that okay with you, and does he understand what it means to have you in his life now? Vice versa. If that girl is all about her mom and her dad, or whatever the scenario may be, you need to find out, sir, exactly what it is that's going on in her life and how connected that is, and whether or not you can deal with that. You need to understand all of these things. That's why you need to go on long courtships. Now, when I say long, I can't really give you a time frame necessarily, but I don't think that people should do what I did. 8 months wasn't long enough. A lot of difficulty and challenges came from that. If I was going to say something typical, I would say I don't think there's anything wrong with 24 months. I think that there's a lot that can be accomplished in 24 months, including this other piece. That is, what are your plans? What's your vision? What's your purpose? What's your plan? Where are you going? What are you doing? How close are you to it? Do both of you agree on that? Is that something that you see together? Here's another huge one. Speaking of plans and purpose and vision, most people meet when they're on their way somewhere. And then I end up counseling these people over the past 30 years because all of a sudden they're in a relationship that they say, Pastor D, I just gave up so much of myself. I gave up. I feel like I compromised. I don't know who I am anymore. No, you know what happened? Because all I do is I circle all the way back to the beginning of their relationship, and I recognize and realize they just simply never had these conversations. One person gave up something to be with this other person, and now they're resentful towards this other person. The other person is like, I didn't necessarily ask you to give that up. You did it. You came along. I thought we were in agreement. That's typically the stories that I've heard that's come from this. So it's usually not that somebody gave up, was lost themselves. It's typically that they gave it up willingly because they wanted to have the relationship and they thought, well, it'll change. I say have these conversations up front and now. And so I think it's important for you to do this other huge thing. When you're on your way somewhere and you meet somebody, ask yourself this really massive question, and it is this: is there enough room in my life to fit this other person's dreams and visions into where I'm going, and can we exist together? That way you never have to have this conversation of how you gave up so much of yourself and this, that, and the third. You just don't want to even get into that space in your life. It's not necessary for you to get there. You don't have to. You just simply need to be able and willing to have these upfront, really hard, vetted conversations. I also am going to tell you that if you want to be successfully married, okay, once you get married, well, even prior to you getting married, you should start hanging around with people who you believe have successful marriages. That's who you should hang out with. This is a huge key, because I think that people miss this all the time. Get around people who have been successful in their own marriages. And when I say successful, I'm not just talking about financially. I'm talking about their marriage is solid. You see it when you're around, you sense it, you feel it. They're not trying. It's an outflow of who they are. I think that is incredibly important that you take the time to make sure that you are get yourself as equipped as you possibly can to be as healthy as you possibly can in your relationship. Now, some of you are already married and you're saying, it's a mess, this, that, and the third, so on and so forth. I don't know what I'm going to do. We're at each other's throat all the time, all this other kind of good stuff. Well, let me tell you something. First of all, it's not easy, so I don't want to sit here and tell you. And everybody's situation is a little different, and I don't know all of your nuances to your relationship. But I will tell you this. I work with couples now, and one of the very things that I do is I simply say, we have to go all the way back to the beginning of as if you were not married, and we're going to have to work from there. Some of these people are 10, 12 years in, and we go all the way back, and all of a sudden they're like, I never knew this. You never told me that. All these kind of things. Now, so most people will try to tell you that money is the number one reason for divorce. I'm going to tell you what my experience has been, and my experience has been the number one reason for that is the very things that I just told you. Nobody's communicating. People are compromising the wrong things. It's one thing for you to say you can compromise, but it's another thing for you to compromise the wrong thing. Don't give up something in your life that you ultimately will be angry at this other person that you believe that they took from you, when in fact you will have been the person who gave this to them. They wouldn't have taken anything from you. You simply gave it. And there was no reason for them to believe that they were mismanaging the relationship or mismanaging you or misunderstanding you in any way, shape, or form. But on either side, husband or wife. So the way for you to recover from this is, one, get around some wisdom, okay? Get around some wisdom. You got to get around some people who can help you, but you got to start conversating about this, even if your marriage is in trouble right now. You've got to get around some people who can help you. You have to start having some conversations. You're going to have to go all the way back to the beginning, more than likely, and dig all of this out. Some of you, you're in such a hurry to get married, you might be marrying somebody who's a sex addict, who's addicted to porn, who's addicted to spending money, which is a whole nother thing that you need to talk about. How do you deal with this from a financial perspective? You need to find out how this person spends money, when they spend money. Are they a saver? Are they an investor? You have to ask yourself, where are you in your life? Stop saying he's cute, he's fine, I just want to be with him, he's this, that, and the third, so on and so forth. So it didn't matter to me. It will matter eventually. And then this doesn't make sense. You will then turn around and say you want to leave this person and then go make all this energy and investment back into somebody else, all because, watch this, all because you failed to have a conversation up front. If your deal breakers are, hey, I'm more of an investor than I am a spender, you can't get married to somebody who does that unless you all have a really good strategy to make that work for you, where there's a good compromise and nobody's going to feel some kind of way. But how do you get there? Time and conversation. That's when people aren't ready to do. So what you do is you get it all convoluted, because you run, you get married because the church told you run so you don't burn, and then you go and you get married, and then you try to build your relationship on sex. Wrong, wrong, and wrong. I'm going to tell you something right now. If you think that building a relationship on sex is what is going to help you, you're both going to be greatly disappointed. It may be good and all that, and I believe that God created it for all the good reasons that everybody typically enjoys it, for procreation and for intimacy purposes. But you can't build your relationship on sex. There's so many other things that go on in life, from your finances to your parents getting older, to raising children, to where you live, to the kind of car you need to buy, to the kind of investments that you need to have. If you're not having these conversations, folks, I can tell you right now, you're already in trouble, because you bypassed all of that because all you wanted to do was get married, and now everything's an Instagram post, and she has on her flower dress and her flower hat, and he's got on his skinny jeans and their waist, their ankle high, and his shoes and his white shirt, and his muscles are showing, and they're in the field with their little kids, and the sunshine is coming, and there's lilies everywhere, and it's the love of my life forever. But that's not real life. That's an Instagram photo. That has nothing to do with what happens on a day in and day out basis in people's lives. I'm trying to help somebody here. I'm answering this question because I've had this thing posed to me so many times over the past 30 years. PD, what's the secret? There isn't one. There is no secret. There's no secret. It takes a lot of hard work. It takes a lot of compromise. It takes a lot of apologizing. Let me say that to you too. You're going to compromise a lot. You're also going to have to be somebody who's willing to apologize. You're going to have to be a person who says, I'm sorry a lot, if you want to have a really successful relationship and come over sometimes to another person's side. You're going to have to be a person who's very sympathetic. You're going to be somebody who's very empathetic. You're going to have to be somebody who's patient. You're going to have to be somebody who listens. If you don't want to do all of that, then don't get married. I'm just going to tell you, don't do all of that. I want to say another thing to the ladies here that might make you mad, but really, honestly, I do not care. If your mother taught you to have an escape plan, and that's how you go into the relationship, keep your shoebox, put your shoebox up in your closet or keep it at your friend's house, and make sure you hold yourself back a little money just in case in the event that you have to go. You're entering into a relationship already with an escape plan. That means you're not committed to it. You have a plan in the event that you need to jump off of the plane. But the truth of the matter is you don't know what you have until you've had to fight for sometimes what you have. Now, let me be clear. Let me be absolutely clear. I'm not talking about abuse. Verbally, physically, mentally, emotionally. I'm absolutely positively not talking about that. I'm going to tell you, get out of that right away. Scram, get out of that. There's nothing healthy about that, and that's not you showing some kind of faithful, great spirituality because you stayed in that terrible relationship with somebody who's beating on you or abusing you. That is not faith. I just want to say that to you. So that's not what I'm talking about. But you having a disagreement and you run from everything all the time. You can't run from something. You can't run. This is something you're going to have to deal with. This is something you're going to have to shake out. But again, a lot of this you won't know for you or your spouse until you get that time and you talk about it and you deal with these really hard things that happen in your life and in your relationship, because maybe your parents did that. Maybe they didn't stick or stay. Maybe your parents always threatened that they were going to leave and that's all you heard. So that's your way of communicating. When you don't like something, well, I'll just leave. That's not an answer. It's not a strategy either. So to me, there's so much more that I could say on this, but I'm going to leave it here just because I think this is enough to help a lot of people already, and to really bless you with this. Don't think that just because you met somebody and they're cute, that's a relationship. That's not a relationship. You really need to look deeper into that person's life. In general, I personally, if I was talking to somebody, I'd say you need at least 24 months of that. I think that you should go through good marriage counseling. Once again, not someone who's just going to sit there and make you recite scripture. You should know scripture because you're a Christian. You should know the things that you need to walk out because you are a believer. But I also think you need to sit down with a financial planner. You need to find out about that person's history. If they have a sexual history already, they're not a virgin. You need to find out about that. You need to find out again about their emotions, what their dreams are, what their visions are. And you need to see if they are even moving in that direction. Because most people meet and you put your best foot forward and you tell somebody everything that's beautiful about your life. And then it's not necessarily something that you are functioning in. And I think it's incredibly important that you do. So I just wanted to share that with you. The other scripture, of course, that we hear a lot is to 2 Corinthians 6:14, right? Be not unequally yoked with unbelievers, for what partnership has righteousness with lawlessness, or what fellowship has light with darkness? Let me say something to you. That passage does apply. Okay, I want to close here. That passage does apply, but it doesn't only apply to that. That's talking about you in every aspect of your life. It's not just talking about you in your marriage. That it says, be not unequally yoked with an unbeliever, period. Yes, it applies to your relationship, but it applies to everything else. So again, getting to know somebody, you got to find out how they live their life, because they can be great Sunday morning at church and they could be a crooked business person in their office, being unequally yoked, being unethical. There's things that you need to know about people. And I don't think that we take enough time to get to know them, because everybody's in such a hurry to do an Instagram post, have sex, or have little babies and all this other kind of good stuff, instead of taking the time to use that Proverbs 4:7. It says, getting wisdom is the wisest thing you can do. And whatever else you do, develop good judgment. The ESV says the beginning of wisdom is this: get wisdom. And whatever else you do, get insight. The Berean Bible says wisdom is supreme, so acquire wisdom. King James said wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom. I mean, listen, it just doesn't get any more clear than that. So I'm going to tell you to get wisdom. If you're already married and you're struggling, there's a couple of things I want to offer you. One, I am a coach, not a counselor. I'm a certified life coach. I can help you if you've already agreed to stay married, but you want your relationship to be better. I can help you. Now, if there's a whole bunch of trauma, there's a whole bunch of abuse, you need to go see a counselor. That's the last thing that I want to tell you as well. If your pastor or your pastoral team is not equipped to help you because they don't have the credentials, therapy type credentials, you should not continue to go and try to get your marriage fixed by them. And I'm being totally serious about that. And all due respect to every pastor, I did it. I was one. I was there. They're not credentialed enough to help you. So you need to find somebody who can really help you, especially when it comes to these traumatic incidences and different things along those lines. I think it's incredibly important that you do that. Okay, so with that being said, again, there's so much stuff that I would like to say about this. I hope this helped you. But again, if you need my help, feel free to inbox me. Let me know. I'll be more than happy to help you. I currently work with a whole bunch of people. Again, I'm a certified Christian life coach. And so I work with people, and everything I do is faith-based, just like this video that I just told you. But I'm also going to give you some practical things that I think you need to know that will help you and bless your life. In the meantime, if you like this, subscribe, share it, all that other kind of good stuff. Let somebody else know that I'm here. And if you want any quick shorts, I don't do any shorts on here. You can hit me up on TikTok at Demetrius.Colbert, and there you can find some of my shorts of encouragement that I typically do a couple of times a week. All right. Y'all be blessed. Talk to you soon.